So this lovely picture of Usopp was drawn and inked by me and colored by Mugen the Stray Dog. Certainly if you like this type of thing and more, remember to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and even the Google+. One Piece Chapter 214, Strategy to Escape the Sand Kingdom.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the tantalizing, epically woven together tale of One Piece. Our last chapter, of course, saw us with a number of different things, happening, but really the culmination of it was Igaram and Chaka discussing and kind of, freaking out a bit about the bounty posters, the newest released wanted posters for Luffy, 100 million berries, and Zoro now having a bounty on his head of 60 million berries. So. But both very, very high amounts, maybe not for the Grand Line, but from where we were at in the previous bounty of Luffy only having 30 million on his head after Arlong Park, it's certainly a jump up in the world. So that is how we left things off, and really that's kind of right where we pick up over here. We know that the Straw Hats are preparing to leave, or at least they were talking about leaving that evening in the last chapter, and we saw that there was a little bit of Vivi kind of being torn. Her and Nami obviously have become real close gal pals, and that seemed to be, a point worth mentioning as well. But the chapter starts out with Igaram, feverishly running down the halls of the palace to get to Nami, or to get to Vivi to explain everything to the princess, and he bursts in and he's like, "What the hell? Where is everybody?" She's like, "Oh, they left." So he goes and explains everything. We gotta get word to them, and we gotta get this, and she's just like, it's really not going to matter, Like, first of all, they'll just be happy about it, you know what I mean? And it's not going to change what they do or where they go or anything else. So it's like irrelevant information, no big deal, And she's really kind of quiet and withdrawn, which, it sort of troubles Igaram because he thinks in his mind, like, it doesn't seem right, She just kind of was like, whatever, let him go. So then we go and we see the chapter unfold through a number of different things. We wind up seeing her that evening going and... actually that evening going and kind of laying down in the bed and talking with Karoo, the duck, and speaking about how it's so quiet now and there's nobody, trying to raid the fridge at midnight and there's no swordsmen practicing all night long, and basically just her longing for her friends, that she had made and been on this just excellent, magnificent journey, And it's not like it's quiet around the kingdom and there's nothing for her to do. It's just quiet compared to what she's, become accustomed to over the last 100 and some odd chapters since she joined up with the Straw Hats as Miss Wednesday at the time, So, or called a ride to Whiskey Peak from them. But anyway, we know how it all went down. So then we wind up going and we see the Straw Hats, and they're riding on, it appears to be the Supersonic Duck Squadron. And that's what, that was another thing that Vivi said to Igaram anyway. She's like, even if I sent Karoo after him to tell him they're on the Supersonic Duck Squadron, he's not going to be able to catch them. They're on their way back to Aramalu, where they left their ship. And there's no point, you know what I mean? Plus it's impossible anyway. So that's how things are left with that. And then we go and we see them, of course, the Straw Hats, and they're talking amongst themselves, and they're asking, Nami, what's wrong, and thinking that I know you'll miss Vivi and everything else. And Nami goes and plays it off like she does very well. She's gotten used to, because of having to hide all that pain and hurt inside for the 8 years of the terrible, her service to Arlong and Arlong Park. I think she's learned to kind of deflect things with coming up with other shit that's not really how she's feeling, because then she goes and she says, she alludes to and says that, she let Igaram off the hook about the billion berries, just for Vivi's sake, right? Because if you remember back in Whiskey Peak, she had agreed for them to save the princess when he came to them and said, hey, we're undercover and this and that, we need help. And she said they'd do it for 1 billion berries. So it's kind of funny because Usopp's like, what? Everybody's like, what? And Usopp actually falls off of his thing, and you hear somebody go in the next panel, you see Usopp fell off, this and that, and then they're talking amongst, I can't believe you'd say that, I can't believe this, blah. Usopp fell off, and somebody's like, don't worry, he'll be fine. He only fell off because he was shocked at what happened, so definitely a funny exchange there. But when we see, when it goes back to the palace and we see Princess Vivi laying in bed and speaking with Karoo on things, we see the flashback of what actually happened. What happened was earlier that night, and this whole chapter really started off, and I really should have, I guess, focused on this. It started off with us meeting up with and seeing, we saw Jango, who is now, of course, a Marine. It says Jango the Turncoat is how he's introduced, and instead of Iron Fist full body, he's double Iron Fist full body, and they're both third mates on this ship, and they're having a little dance off and everything else, and they're, of course, under the guise of Captain Hina, Black Cage Hina. And that's how the whole chapter actually started out, and I apologize for backtracking with it, but it was just a brief couple of page thing where she's talking about find the damn ship. They first they come there late, and she's like, why are you late? And she's like, oh, because, and they got flowers for her, and she's like, I'm not interested. Personally, I think she may be a lesbian. Either that or she has no interest in either one of these ding-dongs. But it is kind of neat to see one of those cover stories go and come back around full circle and see those characters interact again, so I guess that's why it's worth mentioning. But Hina, the bottom line, the short and skinny of it is that, nobody can find the ship anywhere. They've got 30 Navy ships and all these other things closing off all the ports, closing off the Sandora River, and she's like, just find the ship, I don't care if you have to search every inch of the coast, and that's what that was all about. So, but it also led up to this flashback where the Straw Hats were sitting around, and all of a sudden they get a call on the snail phone, the snail transponder, and they're like, oh, who is it? And you hear it's Mr. Two, and he's like, oh, it's me, Bon-chan, or whatever, right? They go and they hang up on his ass, and he calls back and he's like, why did you hang up on me, and this and that, I thought we were friends. So anyway, he winds up telling them that they have to come to him and meet up with him in wherever he is at. I would assume somewhere near Aramalu where the ship was last, because he has their ship. He has their ship. He's calling from their ship. He's on their ship, and so they're like, "Is it a trap? Is it this?" But we got to go to him anyway. So that's where they're headed on their way to the Supersonic Duck Squadron. The whole point of it, though, and I know I explained things a little bit backwards in the chapter, but the whole point of the flashback was to show, obviously, that that's where they took off in the middle of the night. But they went and they didn't ask Vivi to come with right away. You could tell that she was torn about it and everything. They said, you have to make up your own mind what you want to do. If you want to come with us and be a pirate on the high seas and have this adventure and everything else, by all means, you're welcome to, okay? But you have to make the decision because you're also a princess in this kingdom and everything else. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to go meet up with Bon Clay or Bon-chan or whatever the hell, and we're going to meet up with him and get our ship, and we're going to go sail down the Sandora River, come around to the East Coast, and then we'll be in the eastmost port, and we can't drop anchor or anything, but we'll basically slow down enough to where if you want to be there, you can come with us. We'll be there tomorrow, So she's laying in bed thinking about this, and she's thinking about, okay, and it takes 4 hours to get there if Karoo brings me, so I'd have to leave at 8 in the morning. She's like, I can't believe I'm actually thinking about becoming a pirate. And that's where her inner monologue goes, and about how, there's a lot of things still to do here in the kingdom, but it's so, she's made these friends, and it was such a neat bond that they had, and I think she's really thinking about becoming a pirate and going on this adventure. So we don't know how that's going to play out, but that's what she's laying up in bed thinking about and it was this flashback that showed what happened hours previous. So then we go and we see the chapter shortly after that goes, and there's one more portion before it ends up, and that's the Supersonic Duck Squadron actually arriving with the Straw Hats, finding their ship, and of course, Bon-chan is on there, and he's just like, hello, my friends, and this and that, and they're like, they're pretty hesitant, you know what I mean? Zoro especially, Zoro's kind of like gets over, he's like, get out of my way, and he's like, oh, sorry. So they're like, dude, we're enemies, what's your deal here, man, and he's like, no, that was only because... First of all, he explains to them, he's like, listen, it wasn't like he tricked, because they're like, you tricked us. And he's like, I didn't trick, I didn't know who you were, So it makes a lot of sense, because the guy, it seemed genuine when he met them on the ship, and at the end, he said that, made that speech about friends, and it only takes a few minutes to know that you can have friends for a lifetime, and I thought it was very good, actually, it was very well done, but I didn't know if you could take him seriously. My gut feeling was that we could, and that because he didn't know who they were, that regardless, I thought he might have been the catalyst. I made that prediction back there that he may have been the catalyst in helping them in the Alabasta arc or saga here. And it turns out that he wasn't the catalyst in them winning the battle, but he tells them that, the Navy would have found the ship. Otherwise, if he hadn't, obviously grabbed it and hid it, and he really, he believes in friendship, and he just wants to be friends with them. He also, explains that, hey, listen, that was, I was just following orders. Baroque Works is a dissolved thing now anyway. It's not even around anymore. There's really no reason to go and fuss over this stuff. I was just following my orders, So sorry I tried to kill you guys and deceived you or whatever you think, but just following orders, right? So it was actually kind of a cool dynamic that you see, and a paradigm shift in the story, because here's this character that, by all accounts, was considered to be an enemy, somebody that was bad, and now has kind of redeemed himself and really was never really bad to begin with, just blindly followed orders, for his job, his organization that he worked for. Now you can weigh in on that however you want and say, well, he was working for this criminal, he must have known, he must have this, he must have that. That is all true, but when he met the Straw Hats and befriended them, he didn't know that was supposed to be his enemy, and everything else. So his genuine reaction was friendship with them. So I thought it was kind of cool, because then all of a sudden they're like, and then he explains to them about the Marine ships and the forces are everywhere and this and that, and it's going to be very difficult to get out of, to get out of Alabasta. He's like, even a swan couldn't leave, So they decide, so they're like, okay, so we'll team up or help each other out for the time being, because our paths are crossing and we'll be stronger together. So everybody decides to do that. Nami's kind of like, oh God, whatever, because Luffy and Usopp are like dancing and shit with him again, and they're all friendship. So it just reminds me of some like weird My Little Pony type stuff or something. But anyway, that's besides the point. The chapter, though, ends up right after that, and it kind of circles back around to Captain Hina getting a report of, we found the Straw Hats ship, or the Straw Hats. They're in Aramalu, or they're near Aramalu, or whatever. They know what their location is. So she's like, okay, and they're going to get all the forces ready, and they're going to basically go in and take them out, we assume. So, or try to capture them, not take them out, but you know what I mean. So that is where the chapter leaves off, and I do sincerely apologize for kind of telling it in a little bit of an ass-backwards fashion for the first two portions of it there. For some reason, it completely slipped my mind, the whole seeing Iron Fist Fullbody and Jango the Turngoat and now being under Hina's command, because that really is an important part if you think about the cover stories and how they go and connect and then play back into the actual overall main narrative. So it's very cool stuff. And my chapter question is, what do you think about, what I was talking about as far as with Mr. 2, Bon Clay? I know many of you in the comments have described, oh, don't worry, you'll like him, you'll turn out this and that. I think he's still a little bit weird. But I see now what Oda was doing when he wrote it and he put it together and everything, because it really is a neat dynamic to have this person who was supposed to be bad but actually was good, and it shows you under the right circumstances kind of anybody can be friends regardless of knowing what your background is, your history, So what do you think about about Mr. 2 and of course the revelation now that he's kind of, I guess, temporarily joining up with the Straw Hats? Remember to leave your answer in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next one, Nation.
And here is my original ink over pencil drawing of Usopp, brothers and sisters.
Subscribe.